So we're up to 22, so I think I'm going to make my screen big and at least start with introductions, and then if people come
Sure,
in,
yeah, that sounds good.
maybe they'll come in as we're getting to the meat of the situation, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, Rick,
Yeah.
started.
Well, introductions.
Yes.
I guess I get to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Richard Ellis, or Rick Ellis from Washburn University. I've been at the university for going on 29 years now and have been working with the community engaged learning process from the beginning back in the mid-90s. And I'm currently the director of Learning in the Community, which is our Center for Community and Civic Engagement. And that also makes me the Bonner director by default. So I've been doing both of those things. I was responsible for bringing the Bonner program to Washburn campus back in 2001. So been involved with the foundation for a long time. That's good enough.
And my name is Christine Hart. I am the Associate Director of Learning in the Community, the Center for Community and Civic Engagement. I also hold a position as a senior lecturer and teach in our Civic Engagement Poverty Studies minor on campus. And I have been in my position working with the Bonner Foundation since 2002. I actually started off as an AmeriCorps Vista through the Bonner Foundation with Washburn, and then moved into my position later. One thing to just kind of set the foundation is that we are from Washburn University. If you don't know where we're at, we are located in Topeka, Kansas. We are a municipal university, I believe the last one in the country, or one of the last couple. I hear differing things on any given day, which means that we're supported by the county and city that we live in. And so we have a really strong mission about being connected to our community. We are also a campus of anywhere between 65 and 7,000 students. So we're not the smallest campus in the Bonner network, but we're also not the largest by any means. Our students tend to not be residential. Most of our students live off campus, and we tend to have a high number of Pell Grant eligible first generation students as well, just to give you an idea of what our university looks like and how that kind of frames our view of community engaged learning as we go through this. So the agenda for today, we're going to try to hit on all these things. But we're going to give you just a brief historical overview of our center and community engagement on our campus to give you an idea of how it's grown over the years. Then we're going to talk about how we developed a campus-wide rubric that we use, and we'll share that rubric with you as we go. We're also working on issues of tenure and promotion and how to incorporate community engaged learning into our tenure and promotion, as well as a community engaged learning transcript designation for students on our campus. Then we'll take a little bit of time to talk about what we do around development to incorporate this into campus, but also following up with that, we'll answer any questions. I've also asked Rachida to monitor the chat, so if you have questions as we go along, we're happy to answer that as you have them, so feel free to post those in the chat.
Right now I'm going to talk very briefly about the history of the development of community engaged learning on campus at Washburn. I think I defaulted to this just because like I said, I've been there 29 years, so I've been there from the beginning. Back in 1996, I had a student come to me who thought there should be some kind of volunteer work being done from Washburn's campus. There had been nothing done at that point. Nobody even talked about doing service work. And she set out to create a student club. At that time, I was the chair of the Human Services Department, so I was teaching and chairing an academic department at the time, and became the faculty advisor to the student club. Stacy Tucker, who's the student who started, is now the vice president of community and honors programs at the Kansas City, Kansas Community College. For about 5 years, we went along having students recruit and place students, partnered with an organization called the Volunteer Center of Topeka. In 2001, I was offered the opportunity. I had run into Bobby Hackett and Wayne Meisel before that, wanting to find out about how we could become involved with the Bonner program. And in 2001, they offered us the opportunity to become a Bonner Leader program. It was for the first year, it was being run by myself. We sort of put it underneath the student organization of Link, so it was still kind of being viewed as part of a student club. It wasn't. We didn't have a center at that time. After the first year, the foundation offered us an AmeriCorps Vista, and I had been actually driving on my way to a wedding in Minnesota when I was driving through Iowa, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, I know I could con into coming back to Washburn. Chris Hart, doesn't she live in Iowa? And I called from my cell phone. I called her and told her to come back to Topeka. She had been my student federal work study when she was in graduate school at Washburn. So I called her and asked her to come back, and told her I would probably change her life, and she's been with us ever since 2002. The interesting thing about having the Bonner program, the Bonner Foundation, it gave us a direction, a guidance for how to begin to structure our community engagement work. We went along for 5 years, still under the Human Services Department. I was the chair of the department. I was working with Chris side by side with the Link program. It was quite a bit of a challenge. And in 2006, the vice president of the university, vice president of academic affairs, decided that he wanted to add something to the curriculum called the Washburn Transformational Experience, which was the opportunity for students. He was actually going to make it a requirement that every student would have to participate in one of 4 activities to graduate, either leadership, scholarly or creative research, study abroad, or community service. Well, all but the community service had an institute, a place to house it. And he called me into his office and asked me if I would be interested in having running a center. And I told him that I thought we already had a center, it just wasn't formalized. So Link became a separate academic unit reporting to the vice president of academic affairs, and that's where we stand right now. That gave us a much higher, obviously a much greater presence on campus. Unfortunately, the transformational experience piece became an optional option rather than a requirement after that vice president left. He left, enrollment started to go down, and faculty decided we'll point to the WTE as a reason why enrollment's going down, and nobody wants to come to Washburn. That wasn't true. Annually, we have over 150 to 200 students doing a Washburn Transformational Experience just in community service, even though it's optional now. The next big turning point was in 2012. Well, let me just say, all along the way from 2006 to 2012, anytime the Bonner Foundation had some kind of an opportunity to be part of a project that they were on to expand community engagement, I was willing to sign up and apply for it. So we had a number of different interactions with the foundation other than the national meetings. But in 2012, we were able to be one of the first 9 schools to go through the high impact community engagement initiative that the foundation and the AAC&U had co-sponsored. And we brought together a team of about almost 10 people, I think. I think our team was much bigger than others. And it became, the team stuck together, tried to develop different kinds of ways of introducing high impact community engagement practices into the curriculum. It was a bit of a struggle, I'll say that. Some faculty joined on, but they never quite got the concept of what that was. I think we were, we'll talk about that later, but I think that, you know, we're pushing people to go further into community engagement work without ever having started community engagement work. The committee still exists, although we had the vice president that was on that committee has left. I think we're left with 4 of us from the 10 that were originally on the original team. We still meet with that people we've added to the group, and have made some changes. One of the biggest changes that we have made, and has been difficult, is the language. We have consciously decided that we're going to talk in generalizations about community engaged learning, with that as the as the major focused language of our campus. It's easier to remember, it's easier to deal with. We've been able to get an attribute on courses that are community engaged learning courses, those kinds of things. We are currently part of the Bonner Community Engaged Learning Initiative. We have, that has really gotten us more focused on, because we were able to put together some teams that are really dedicated to doing the kind of work that we want to do. So we have 2 teams that are working, one on promotion and tenure and one on community engaged learning in the courses. I will say that in between these years, the university did fund the Center for Teaching and Excellence, Center for Teaching Excellence and Learning, and we do work with them quite side by side, because it is a faculty development center, and we are able to they are able to produce and put together workshops around community engaged learning, and we work together on that. So that's helped move us along too. But that's about the history of it. We're still around. We're not going anywhere too soon. We do have a new vice president who has come on board in the past 3 years, just about 3 years. And she has committed herself to making community engagement a major component of what Washburn should be known for. Being a municipal university, she believes that we should be engaged with the community from all aspects. So her support and her comments on that has helped people to realize that this is something important, and given us a little bit of a push towards the new initiative, the community engaged learning initiative that we're working on now.
So we thought that we would start off by breaking you out into groups briefly, maybe 6 minutes, and we just want you guys to talk about what qualifies as community engaged learning at your college or university. Then we'll come back, share a little bit, and then I'll start sharing about the rubric that we use and how we define it here and what steps we're taking. So I think
Chris, are we giving them 5 minutes?
Yeah, let's give them about 5 minutes.
Okay, all right.
How do we break them into groups?
Yeah, I'm doing that. You'll be prompted to join a group, so you just click on join.
So you're like looking at the differences, comparing and contrasting the differences, and different things like that. But my school also, well, at least our Bonner program, we launched workshops where we go to different service learning courses, and we do basically like an orientation or a quick overview of how to be civically engaged properly, how not to do certain stereotypes or fall into stereotypes, and trying to remove those stereotypes that people think of when they enter the community. So that was just a really big thing for us. So the service learning that I guess I've been really exposed to are those workshops. And that's basically that at Wider.
All right, do you want to go, Sophia, or should I? Okay, so at my school, we have 8 hours, like an 8 hours, what we call a CEL requirement. So Bonners don't have that since we do 300, so a year. And so you just need 8 hours before you graduate. I don't think that's enough, but the students at TCNJ treat it like it's the worst day of their life because they have to like go to the CEL day. So basically they'll come to a Bonner site, they involve themselves in, like we lead a presentation. And then it's changed a little bit in the past year. So like we're kind of in transition. So some of them are just regular CEL days where it's all done in one day, and some of them are broken up. So on my site, for instance, we have like a 2-week CEL. So you come for 4 hours one day and 4 hours another. Yeah, so that's
I would say a lot of the things that we do, like we involve the community. So in many of the service, like you said, of course, like we are in community engagement, and one of the service that, and also we do a project IBP, and it's focused on like a specific issue, specific topic, and a lot of that many times involves the community as well, a major part. Like it's like sometimes like the entire year project work, and it focuses eventually like we have to involve the community in a way in many of the issues. But that's one aspect. But also another service that I mean it's actually similar to the one that you that Kennedy was just talking about, is it's a nonprofit organization that's centered on love with the disabled community. And so it's an adult with disabilities, and they just serve them, and it's just so wonderful to be with them. And I honestly, like, I'm so grateful for it. But yeah, they just focus on sharing Christ's love with them. It's so good to be there. So that's my experience.
Thank you all for sharing. Can you hear me now? Is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
Great. Yeah, I had my fan on. I think that was the issue. So my name is Laura Kane. I am a faculty member at Capital University, and it's so exciting to hear the student experience. One of the things, and for me, the way I connect with community engagement is through courses as well. So it sounds like a lot of you are taking courses, and then you have projects within those courses. I also sit on a working group, or what we're now calling a community of practice, where we've tried to figure out the language behind what a community engaged course is. So I pulled up our document just to give you a firm idea that we spent a lot of time reworking the language. So we've decided that we have a civic and community engagement, just so that we call it a CE, and then it just takes care of it. But these are ones that work with a community partner to work on a challenge or issue identified by that community partner. And then it has a lot of the things that we've talked about in other sessions, that there have to be student learning outcomes, that there has to be reciprocity with the partner, that they're serving, in the community as well as with the community. So it sounds like what we're doing is very similar to what you all are experiencing too.
Yeah, well, people are coming back, so.
Okay. Oh, yeah, we're back to 22 people.
Yes, everyone is back.
Okay. So what did people talk about? What qualifies as community engaged learning at your college and university, and how do you decide that? Would anybody like to share? And feel free to just unmute and jump in.
Anytime now.
break room 1. Hi, this is Ricky. Sorry.
Good, Ricky.
Oh, okay, great. Megan's also stuck. So me and Megan were in the same group, and we were speaking about the differences in our service learning hours and what we do to fill those requirements. And it was interesting to see that we talked about Colorado University has a different block schedule. So because of that different schedule, then trying to implement extra courses into that can be difficult and create different barriers. While I, who have the, I guess, normal or standard terms for 2 semesters, it's easier for us to implement that as well. And we were just comparing and contrasting our different schools. And I'm sure Megan has more to add from our conversation.
Yeah, that's just what I was gonna say, and that we were also talking about how like some of it is academic and some of it isn't. So like, for instance, Bonners at my school don't have the same community engagement requirement as, so like a regular student at my school needs 8 hours before we graduate, but we get 300 a year, and like they just come to our site, so like, we don't need the CEL requirement exactly. But then we like have PCNJ students come to us. And then that's where they get their communication, is like through our bond.
Yeah. So is it safe to say that you feel like there's no one definition that just covers everything on your campus? It looks a little bit different, whether it's Bonner versus curricular.
Yeah. And I know I can say, like, from TCNJ, I think it could be better. I don't think that there's enough, even though there's a lot of different places. I still think that like I liked what you were saying about wanting Washburn to be like known for that. And I just feel like, you know, just with TCNJ's location, I also feel like we could do that. We could be known for community engagement too. So.
Is there anybody else that wants to share?
Well, we kind of talked about how there's lots of different community engagement ways to do community engagement. So from any high impact practices, even internships, to really in-depth service learning, critical service learning, research for a class with a community member. So I was, we're interested to see the rubric, because I think there's a lot of ways to do it. It just, a lot of times it depends on the depth and the intensity of the engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And our rubric definitely has that kind of component to it, and I'll share that in a moment. And before we move on to the rubric, is there one other group that might want to share what they talked about?
I guess so in my group, especially between Widener and Stockton, we talked about capstones and how that integrates with the learning, instead of just going to these service sites and volunteering, bringing that back to Widener and doing that research to kind of see how else we can implement our service or ideologies, just besides implementing at a service site 10 hours a week, and then just doing extensive research of bringing about social change and not just doing the volunteer work, but what new ideas can we bring about. And at least I know for our school, in our program, it wasn't really well received at first, but it's gotten a lot more positive feedback, because I think with anything, it kind of relates to this too. It's something new and something for people to get used to, but it's proven beneficial.
Yeah, and actually that leads nicely into me talking about the rubric, because as we first started to show people the rubric, the feedback we got was, oh my gosh, this is going to be too hard to implement. What are you asking us to do? And so there really was a lot of that negative feedback that we had to overcome as we went through this as well. So going from there, So Washburn has a community engaged learning rubric. Now, we started working on this in about shortly after we started the High Impact Institute with the Bonner Foundation in 2012. And I stepped up to do this because I'm a little nerdy and I'm like, ooh, a rubric, that's what I want to do with my spare time. And everybody was very happy to let me do that. And I will say that this rubric has been evolving over, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, I think we worked on it over maybe 4 years before we got it looking like something that everybody felt that they were on board with.
It was edited and re-edited a number of times. It probably could have taken less time if we didn't expect the whole committee to edit it and wanted to make sure that everybody on the committee had their voice into it. So you obviously had to wait till, that last person got their 2 cents in, and then you rewrote it and edited it again. And so it had input from a committee which was made up of people who actually understood where we were going. They were people that had participated in a HiSEP initiative. At least 4 of those people stayed on the committee.
And so it was definitely a process. And I will say that if you're thinking about doing this at your school, one, a committee was great because it allowed us to get a lot of buy-in from across different units on campus because the committee specifically had that. But it also caused us to really think about this as a living document. So while I'm happy that this is the approved version right now, I really don't anticipate that this will never be updated and evolve as community engagement continues to grow at our university. In fact, I will tell you that my first draft of this actually had a level 4, and the level 4 was talking really about how to have multiple classes within each discipline to really make it something that students would flow through in their discipline to really make us feel more like it was a scaffolded developmental model, like what we would think of with a Bonner program. The committee thought that that would just scare people, and so that was eliminated here, but I would anticipate as we continue to grow, that level 4 may come back into our rubric. The rubric has 6 different areas, and I'll talk about those a little bit. But we really thought it was important, or at least I included it, and the committee agreed, that having a level 0 about what happens on our university that people might think is engaging the community, but doesn't really come up to muster for us was really important, because when we started this work, having a common definition and a common language was just non-existent on our campus. So you would have people say, well, I have someone from the community come in and talk about poverty one day in my class, and so they're engaging with the community as a community member, but then that's all that happened. There was no deeper reflection with that, no engagement piece. It was pretty, we'll take in the information, thank you, and go away. And so as we think about this, we also purposefully didn't want to say that nothing didn't count as some form of community engagement. We wanted to give people credit for even trying to incorporate something. So then we could look at them and say, you know, you've done this. Have you thought about just adding this component and going to a little bit higher level? So we really wanted it to feel inclusive, like something anyone could do, and that community engagement at any level is a good start, and not to be discouraged just because you don't start at the highest level or get to something that might be referred to as that highest impact. Because I think we know that engaging students and getting them to think about their communities and themselves in different ways is really that important piece that we're all striving for. And the more that we do and the more they're exposed to it, the more they're going to continue to be civically engaged when they leave our institutions. So we spent a lot of time really thinking about what do we want the students to come away with in a perfect world. And that's really where we started thinking about these levels. And I'll tell you that Ichabod, when I gave them the names, Ichabod is our school mascot. And so he has a little hat and he wears a little bow tie. And our motto is non nobis solum at Washburn, which means not for ourselves alone. So that's where my headings really came from. But as you look across the different categories, what you'll see is that through each one, we really kind of expect a little bit more depth and engagement with what they're doing in the classroom. I'll also say, and I can share this with people, that we have developed a co-curricular rubric that mirrors this, and I'm happy to share that when I give Rachida our information to post from this presentation. But we really look at things like how community engagement is embedded in the course and whether it's a significant portion of class content, including readings, work in the community, in-class discussions, those types of things, into where they fall on the rubric. We also ask them to look at the 13 attributes of community engaged learning. And I've included that in here. This actually comes from the Bonner Foundation. And as you look at these, they really mirror what Bonner programs do if you really think about your Bonner program. Now we have things like place and humility, integration, depth, development, sequence, teams, reflection, mentors, capacity building, and impact. And I have some definitions here, but for time's sake, I'm actually gonna leave that be for right now and talk about how we want those incorporated. So we hear a lot of times from our faculty that, oh, I do reflection in my class. And so I obviously am incorporating that. And we actually thought about reflection as being if you're only doing reflection, we saw that as being our level 0. We really wanted them to think about, how are you developing a sense of place? How are you developing a sense of teamwork? How are you developing depth of understanding? Things like that. And so for us, higher levels include reflection plus 1 or 2 or 3 of the other pieces. And when you talk to faculty, what we found is that you really can, it doesn't take very much talking and brainstorming for them to realize how easy it is and how important it is to include those other attributes. Additionally, we know that community identified need, working with, not for or on the community, is really what we're striving for. And so we really talk to them about, how do you work with a community partner, and actually have them with the entire developmental process of constructing the class and how they have that say. With some classes, obviously, that's not going to work for them, but just because of how classes are set up, but that's what we really strive for with them. I saw some things popping up in the chat. Are there any questions before I move on to the other?
So Chris, I just responded to Anne. Anne had a question. Do you
Yes.
want to have questions at the end, or do you want to have them now? It's 2:09, so I was thinking how about we spend last 10 minutes for Q&A?
Okay, yeah, so we'll just keep going and then we'll get back to that.
Yes, I'll remind you when it's 2:20 and we can start.
Okay. And then we also talk about community partner relationship, really in terms of, you know, how is that co-educator piece happening, and, you know, really involving the community partner throughout the project and the course. Then of course, always knowledge production and knowledge or project production, which is really thinking about, you know, how are we giving something back to the partner? How are we engaging? Making sure that, again, we're working with them and sharing the knowledge at the end. And then finally, extremely important, is engaging that civic engagement piece with them, making sure that we're having dialogue, deliberation, and bridge building across difference, instilling respect for the values of human dignity and empathy, open-mindedness, tolerance, justice, equality, ethical integrity, and responsibility to a larger good. And really getting the students involved in that critical inquiry and analysis and reasoning and problem solving. It doesn't have to be political, but it could, because, you know, it means really acting as a community for the community, being an advocate, and having that kind of development of our students, because I think we really all have a citizenship piece within the mission of our university that we strive to meet. And this kind of engagement really can help us get to that point. And then you saw this, so hit it, Rick. Rick, are you muted?
Rick, you are on mute. Will you unmute?
I had no idea. I must have hit that by mistake. I was going to say, as part of our Community Engaged Learning Initiative, I'm chairing a task force to look at how we can include community engaged learning as scholarship for promotion and tenure at Washburn University. What I'm going to present is a proposal that we've been working on probably for the most part of this year, and then we got COVID-19 in the middle of it, and so we'll probably extend the work that we're going to do with this on into the fall, you know, because we haven't had the opportunity to have the kinds of meetings that are needed to really put this in place. Our basic statement is that community engaged scholarship consists of research, creative activities, teaching, and service that are designated jointly and carried out in collaboration with community organizations, governmental agencies, and private enterprises, with potential benefit for groups and organizations locally, nationally, and or globally. So it's a broad kind of a mission statement that we really had to work on where this was going to come from. It's been edited a number of times, but the idea is that community engaged scholarship actually is made up of a grouping of community engaged work that tends to mirror the regular promotion and tenure responsibilities. So we're proposing that the following categories be adopted by the departments as part of their language that's already commonly used for promotion and tenure. And we want them to include the idea of community engaged research, community engaged teaching, and community engaged service is all considered scholarship under the scholarship and research bucket, so to speak, for promotion and tenure. But we broke it. I can't move the screen.
Oh, there you go.
When we look at it for promotion and tenure, we started by gaining, what we're doing is we've taken these definitions of research, community engaged research, community engaged learning, and community engaged service. And we have definitions for each of those as part of the intensive kind, and each of those definitions includes the intensity of the kind of work that is done, and that each of those pieces, whether it be what you would call community engaged teaching or has a piece of it that could be and is typically of part of a discipline that could be if you've ever developed a really intensive community engaged course, the intensity of the work that it takes to put that course together, to mentor those students, to work through that, and to keep track and do that is the same amount of work as if you were going to write a publishable article. And we believe that what we're pushing forward is that because Washburn is a municipal university with a commitment to the community, the intensity of that kind of work, whether it be community engaged teaching, scholarship, or even community engaged service, where I as a faculty member in community engaged service, might be offering my time to do an in-depth evaluation of a program for a community partner, so that they could do better, look at how they would do their work and do their work better. That amount of time, even it's service, but it's research. I'm doing the kind of stuff that could be published if I chose to, but it's being left with the community. So each of those things are defined in a way that they show the intensity of the work that's done. We've decided that we're going to start with a bottom-up approach. We know that the vice president of academic affairs is actually advocating for this, but we also know that she does not want to, just demand that this is going to be what's going to happen, and put her foot down and say, order everybody to do this at one time. So we're going to start by breaking down the committee. There's 5 of us, and we're going to go and visit with each department, division, about what this looks like as community engaged scholarship, and how it could be incorporated into promotion and tenure, hoping that they might adopt it themselves or begin to think about it. Once we've got enough support from across that, then we'll have to take it through. We thought we didn't have to do this, but we found out that it's one of these things that has to go through every aspect of the campus. So we have to start with the College of Arts and Sciences in terms of each division, humanities, social science, and natural science, having some approval on that. I come out of the School of Applied Studies, which doesn't have those divisions, so I was surprised to hear that we had to do those people. I didn't think that was a step along the way, but my arts and science colleagues told me they would have to do that. We then would go through the Academic Affairs Committee, the Faculty Senate. The entire faculty would vote on it, and then it would have to actually go to the Board of Regents, which was another surprise to me, that I found out that when changing major things like promotion and tenure, that it has to go to the campus-wide. Departments can do that individually. So if at the departmental level, we met with a variety of departments along the way, and they adopted this into their promotion and tenure proposals, or their promotional tenure documents, we wouldn't really need, unless we wanted, the vice president wanted to make that a university-wide promotion and tenure piece in the faculty handbook. She would then take it to the Board of Regents to be approved for the campus-wide, even though, and if it was existing, the departments would be better off with it that way, if that makes sense. So it's a work in progress. The task force, or the team that I put together, are people that have, there's the director of the Leadership Institute, there's the director of the Honors Program, there is the Associate Vice President of Student Life is on that committee. I'm trying to think who else. Who's the fifth? I always forget who's on the committee. But there, huh?
CTEL, Melanie.
Oh, yeah, the director of the Center for Teaching and Excellence. So we have people that are influential on campus and have some input and speak for their units very and are well respected in their units, which makes it a little bit easier to move this through. Oh, there's a psych professor on there too. So that's where we are with this. A whole bunch of questions over here, I see.
Which I'll go through this real quickly so we can get to questions. So the other group from our community engaged initiative through the Bonner Foundation is one that I am heading up. I have representation from all of the schools and colleges on campus working on this, and we're really working on academic pathways. And so one of the things that we are really focusing on right now is developing an community engaged learning transcript designation for students. It would be listed on their transcript that they were a Washburn community engaged scholar if they go through this. And we really wanted to try to make it something that was going to be accessible to all students regardless of major without having to take extra hours necessarily that might come with people. And so one of the things we talked about was how does this look, because we want it to be intentional and developmental. And so we have 4 components. We are looking at developing a introduction to community engagement course for them to start with. We are looking at making that a gen ed option so that they can actually take it for gen ed rather than something outside of the gen ed curriculum. And I can go into detail if people want this later, but that's going to include them making an individual community engaged learning plan for their time at Washburn. They'll complete at least 2 additional community engaged learning courses, and we are talking about how to make these work through the student's major or minor, or in some cases, if we maybe through the gen ed process, but ideally we want to get these to go through their major or minor so it becomes part of their learning for their future profession. Completion of at least 150 hours of mentored community engagement work that can be curricular or co-curricular, and completion of at least 1 academic community-based learning experience or project. It could be community-based research or an internship or capacity building project for an organization, but it really needs to culminate in a public final presentation of learning. Apron and WT, those are our days of learning presentations on campus. It could be a capstone presentation within the major or minor or through our honors program. It could be a presentation at the undergraduate research day we have at the state capitol every year, or even publication in a journal. Lots of our faculty work to get students published when they can as well. And so that's what we're proposing right now, and working on some of that kind of white paper and stuff to move it forward through that process. From there, we can talk about what we do with faculty development and mentoring, but we are at 1:23, so I want to really take time for questions as well. So
I think some of the questions would address faculty development as well, maybe. So what do we?
Yeah, Chris, the first question is from Anne. What do you consider a significant level of coursework, or rather a significant amount of coursework?
Oh, on the rubric, we talk about it as being, I believe, 25%. But to make that, for a lot of professors, if they took 25% of their in-class time for community engagement, that would never fly. So we include things like outside readings that they might do for the class that hit on things like sense of place, hit on the issues they're working on, class discussion time that's devoted and is around that, as well as their outside work on community engaged projects, time spent in meetings with other students, time spent in meetings with a community partner for the so we really make that pretty broad in how it's interpreted. So that's really what we're talking about as the significant level, at least that kind of 25% or above.
Thanks. And then Megan wanted to know if you'll be sharing this rubric. You are going to share the presentation also, right, on boundary learning community?
Yes, and I'll also send the rubric as a PDF so that you can have it all in one place. And I'll send the co-curricular rubric that we developed as well if people want to see that one too.
Thanks. And Megan has one more question regarding the promotion and tenure work that you are doing. So how has this structure for promotion and tenure been received? Are faculty enthusiastic about it, or are they missing the big picture?
Well, we don't know how, let me just say that we don't know exactly how the faculty are have received this, because I don't think we've been at the point where we've shared it yet. We're completing the document. However, I think that for a large number of some of the major units, probably will have no problem with that. The School of Nursing has already adopted a promotion and tenure packet that includes community engaged scholarship in it. So I think, and that's one of our biggest units on campus, our School of Nursing. I think that some of our departments and units will probably, I think the place where we'll have the most trouble is probably in the College of Arts and Sciences. To be honest, it seems to be the biggest stumbling block for a lot of things. I know that the Vice President has asked on more than one occasion, because when we applied for the Carnegie designation, one of the things that we included in there was that she had asked that all faculty, all the units review the promotion and tenure packets to include community engaged work in them. Many of them have not done that as we begin to look at the departments. So it's going to be a challenge to see how they accept it. I think for some people, it'll be harder for them to adopt it than for others. But I think there's a growing culture on campus for community engaged learning and community engaged scholarship. So I think the piece is going to be how much clout do the younger faculty have over the older faculty? Because I think that's where we're getting a lot of the community engaged learning and community engaged scholarship from, is from the younger, newer faculty. So I think we're hopeful, very, very hopeful that it will float by pretty easily.
Yeah, this is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 more minutes. Any last question? You could unmute yourself and ask.
No more questions? Come on.
You could type if you have any comments about the work. In the chat.
I don't know how much time. I'll just real quickly say that in the faculty development piece that we didn't show that slide on, we partner with the Center for Teaching Excellence and Learning, and one of their pillars for when they opened the center, which was 5 years ago, was was high impact community engaged practices was going to be the piece. And so we have worked with the Center for Teaching Excellence to develop workshops for faculty to produce the information that they need for the new faculty orientation. CTEL does offer stipends and mentoring for faculty who want to develop community engaged learning courses. That's a year-long process. A faculty member applies with a proposal and a syllabus, and if it looks like it's got some potential, they're awarded it's a $1,500 stipend. Through the fall, they're mentored in developing the course, working with them side by side to identify a community partner, and then they implement the course the following spring. So it's a year-long component, and they're mentored through the whole process. We also mentor faculty individually who come to our office and want to create a course or create a second course since they've been a CTEL scholar for that piece. So we've got a lot of faculty, way more faculty than we ever had, I think, working with wanting to know about courses. And then we have the current work with this initiative where we have a total of 12 faculty tied into the initiative. 5 of those are going to be Bonner Faculty Fellows. We started to use that label for the people that are working on a promotion tenure side of it. And they also agreed that they would, if need be, they would mentor some of our Bonners through their capstone or their signature work at the end of their service. That's, I just wanted to run through that if we had time, and I guess we did.
Yep, we are on time now, so thank you so much, Chris and Rick. You have received some comments from people that they found this very helpful, and thank you everyone for joining and asking questions. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Everybody, stay safe, stay healthy.